All right, everybody, welcome to part one of Beowulf, section one. So, Beowulf was a massive epic poem that obviously wouldn't have been broken down into pieces, but for our textbooks purposes and for ease of reading for high school students, they've kind of broken it into these discrete sections. So the whole thing is called Beowulf. The section that we're reading today is called Grendel, and basically it's going to introduce the crisis, the issue, the reason why Beowulf is showing up in the first place. So we have a king called Hrothgar. He's the king of the Danes. Beowulf is from Geatland, which is I've talked to you guys about before, is in Sweden. And he's built this beautiful mead hall in Denmark called Herat. And all of his subjects will come there, and they'll sing and they'll dance and they'll drink and eat and play music and enjoy themselves. And there's a monster nearby called Grendel, and he invades the mead hall. And it's this that brings Beowulf to Denmark from Geatland. Okay. A powerful monster, living down in the darkness, growled in pain, impatient as day after day the music rang loud in the hall, the harp's rejoicing call and the poet's clear songs, sung of the ancient beginnings of us all, recalling the Almighty making the earth, shaping these beautiful plains marked off by oceans, then proudly setting the sun and moon to glow across the land and light it. The corners of the earth were made lovely with trees, and leaves made quick with life with each of the nations who now move on its face. Right? So here we have the kind of motivation behind Grendel's anger and frustration with the mead hall. And it comes down to singing. He's a big monster, and he hears this beautiful music that is most importantly praising God. And this upsets Grendel to the point where he has to go and invade. Okay. So yeah, we have these poets that are singing songs about the creation of the earth, right? And all these beautiful things that the God has done. Again, this is probably the Beowulf poet editorializing, inserting some Christianity into what is essentially a pagan story. It's probably more likely that the monster Grendel just was angry that other people were having fun, not necessarily that it's because they were singing about God, as our ancient Danes probably wouldn't have been singing about God, as they weren't converted to Christianity. And then, as now, warriors sang of their pleasure. So Hrothgar's men lived happy in his hall, till the monster stirred, that demon, that fiend, Grendel, who haunted the moors, the wild marshes, and made his home in a hell not hell but earth. He was spawned in that slime, conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures banished by God, punished forever for the crime of Abel's death. The Almighty drove these demons out, and their exile was bitter. Shut away from men, they split into 1,000 forms of evil, spirits and fiends, goblins, monsters, giants, a brood forever opposing the Lord's will and again defeated. So once again, we have the kind of insertion of Christianity here. So Grendel is not just a big monster. He is a monster that was born of two monsters who were birthed by Cain, the first murderer who kills his brother in the Bible. So he's got this kind of like crazy, monstrous ancestry that the poet uses to emphasize his evil. Right. They call him a demon. They call him a fiend. He haunts the moors. He doesn't just live in them. He was spawned in slime. And again, that alliteration there of spawned and slime has that kind of gross feel to it because of that sibilancy and that just kind of, that spawn, right? We think of like monsters or gross, slimy, wriggly things spawn. And we have again this will again and again, or sorry, a brood forever opposing the Lord's will and again defeated. So this idea that there are monsters, but who always triumphs? God. Then, when darkness had dropped, Grendel went up to Heorot, wondering what the warriors would do in that hall when their drinking was done. He found them sprawled in sleep, suspecting nothing, their dreams undisturbed. The monster's thoughts were as quick as his greed or his claws. He slipped through the door, and there in the silence snatched up 30 men, smashed them unknowing in their beds, and ran out with their bodies, the blood dripping behind him, back to his lair, delighted with his night's slaughter. So again, we have the repetition of that S, sprawled in sleep, suspecting, slipped, silent, snatched, smashed. Alliteration doesn't always have to be like side by side. Sometimes there will be words in between, but again, it's just that repetition of that consonant sound. And here we have a monster again being used with that sibilant S. It makes him seem scary and like a snake, something that just makes us go ugh, because we don't like it. So yeah, it's a big monster. At daybreak, with the sun's first light, they saw how well he had worked, and in that gray morning, broke their long feast with tears and laments for the dead. Hrothgar, their lord, sat joyless in Heorot, a mighty prince mourning the fate of his lost friends and companions, knowing by its tracks that some demon had torn his followers apart. He wept, fearing the beginning might not be the end. And that night Grendel came again, so set on murder that no crime could ever be enough, no savage assault quench his lust for evil. So here we've kind of set Hrothgar up as a pretty sympathetic character. He is the lord of the manor, and he is upset that he cannot protect his people the way that he thinks he should be able to. And so he's weeping over the death of these men, because as the leader of Heorot and inviting people into his home, Hrothgar would have basically been swearing an oath that he would keep them safe. And he hasn't. Instead, a giant monster has come and killed them. And we know that this is a giant monster because he snatched up 30 men at once in kind of one armful. So we know that Grendel is a big, scary monster that just can, decimate a population without any fear for his own life. And he talks about this nice little bit of foreshadowing, fearing the beginning might not be the end, right? That this was not his first and last attack on Heorot, but that it was going to continue to happen over and over again. And as we see, it does. Grendel comes back to try and attack these people. Then each warrior tried to escape him, searched for rest in different beds, as far from Heorot as they could find, seeing how Grendel hunted when they slept. Distance was safety. The only survivors were those who fled him. Hate had triumphed. So Grendel ruled, fought with the righteous, won against many, and won. So Heorot stood empty and stayed deserted for years, 12 winters of grief for Hrothgar, king of the Danes, sorrow heaped at his door by hell-forged hands. His misery leaped the seas, was told and sung in all men's ears, how Grendel's hatred began, how the monster relished his savage war on the Danes, keeping the bloody feud alive, seeking no peace, offering no truce, accepting no settlement, no price in gold or land, and paying the living for one crime only with another. So Grendel terrorizes Heorot for 12 years before Beowulf shows up. So we have this beautiful mead hall that nobody can kind of enjoy because a terrible monster will come and kill you in your sleep if you go there. So this idea, this metaphor right here, his misery leaped to the seas, was told and sung in all men's ears. This is showing us how we get from how Hrothgar's story gets from Denmark all the way to Sweden, right? It's showing how the tales of this beautiful mead hall that have been attacked by a monster are told widely, and that's how Beowulf hears about it and decides to come and try and help. No one waited for reparation from his plundering claws. That shadow of death hunted in the darkness, stalked Hrothgar's warriors, old and young, lying in waiting, hidden in the mist, invisibly following them from the edge of the marsh, always there, unseen. So here we have two really nice kennings. We have plundering claws and that shadow of death, both used to describe Grendel. Right, plunder is stolen goods, right? So he's stealing men's lives away, which again adds to his kind of monstrousness. And same with shadow of death, right? It's like it's always just right there, right behind you, waiting to attack you. And the fact that he's stalking Hrothgar's warriors, again, makes it seem so scary and as if they're always in danger. So mankind's enemy continued his crimes, killing as often as he could, coming alone, bloodthirsty and horrible. Though he lived in Heorot when the night hid him, he never dared to touch King Hrothgar's glorious throne, protected by God, God whose love Grendel could not know. But Hrothgar's heart was bent. The best and most noble of his council debated remedies, sat in secret sessions, talking of terror and wondering what the bravest of warriors could do. And sometimes they sacrificed to their old gods, made heathen vows, hoping for hell's support, the devil's guidance in driving their affliction off. That was their way, and the heathen's only hope. Hell always in their hearts, knowing neither God nor his passing as he walks through our world, the Lord of heaven and earth. Their ears could not hear his praise, nor know his glory. So here, the Beowulf poet is definitely editorializing a little bit. So, like I said, the Danes wouldn't have known really about Christianity. It wasn't brought to them at this point. So when they're talking about how they're praying to their old stone gods, I'd be praying to the pagan gods. And he talks about how they're heathens. That's they don't know about God, so they have to be heathens. And so hell is kind of always in their hearts. So he's kind of basically putting down the Danes a little bit for that kind of thing. Another important Christian allusion that we see up here is the fact that Hrothgar's throne is protected by God. So that's pretty significant. And again, it's showing, one, how great Hrothgar is, and two, how terrible Grendel is. He's unable to touch this throne in this empty mead hall because it's protected by God. So this kind of goes to that idea of the divine right of kings, the fact that kings are ordained by God. They are appointed by God. It's not just that they were born luckily born into the right family to be kings, but because God deemed them worthy. And as such, Grendel is obviously not worthy because he's born of monsters that are born of Cain. Mm-hmm. Let them beware, those who are thrust into danger, clutched at by trouble, yet carry no solace in their hearts, cannot hope to be better. Hail to those who will rise to God, drop off their dead bodies, and seek our Father's peace. So basically it's saying, like, if the going gets tough, don't turn to the devil, don't turn to false gods. Always kind of rely in God, even if it kills you. Drop off your dead body and seek our Father's peace. Like, even if you die believing in God, at the very least, you get to go to heaven. And that is the end of Grendel. So that introduces us to our first big monster. And we're going to be introduced to Beowulf in the next section. So you got some questions for Grendel. Make sure that you save those in your journal folder, and that you're working on those as we're reading. Bye, guys.